thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my family's story. This year we celebrate 150 years since Canada became a nation, and we have come a long way since. Unfortunately, there has been a few dark blots in our Canadian history, dark blots that have been difficult to erase. One of the dark blots represents the forced evacuation and internment of the Japanese Canadians after the infamous bombing of Pearl Harbor by Japan. Suddenly, 22,000 Japanese Canadians living in BC, especially along the coast, became enemy aliens. My family, being in Victoria, BC at the time in 1942, was one of those families. Against the background of racial discrimination, we became victims of injustice and inequality as we were forcibly removed from the west coast of British Columbia and from our homes and livelihood. With very little notice, we, along with others, were herded temporarily into the cattle stalls of the PNE in Vancouver. From there, we were transported by train to the interior of BC. For us, it was a little town called New Denver in the Kootenays where we lived till the war ended. When the war ended, the government was determined to disperse the Japanese out east or send us back to Japan, even though most of us were Canadian citizens. There was a ban disallowing us returning to the West Coast. Refusing to go to Japan or go out east after the war ended, my father found whatever work he could find to support us around the Slocan and Silverton area until the ban was lifted. When the ban was finally lifted in 1949, with meager savings, my parents managed to put a small down payment on a 15-acre farm on Brown Road in South Surrey, where we resettled. Gradually, more and more Japanese Canadians families moved to Surrey. Many, like us, became strawberry farmers. Going down 32nd Avenue, you see beautiful condominiums, homes, and the first-class Morgan Creek golf course just past the graveyard. What a contrast to where we moved to in 1949. The street was a narrow gravel road, sometimes full of potholes. At that time, it was called Brown Road, and went from the Pacific Highway into the Elgin area, across the King George Highway. Small houses, many on acreage, existed along that road. Being faced with the twin realities of having our property confiscated and our livelihood disrupted, my parents started life anew with 7 children. My father was 50 years old, my mother 40 years old. Formerly a chicken farm, the property we bought had a huge chicken house and a small 4-bedroom house, not much bigger than the shacks we lived in New Denver. I'll never forget being greeted onto the property with the sight of a huge pile of Douglas fir stumps in front of the chicken house. Years of hard work of clearing the land and turning it into a strawberry farm had begun as we started our resettlement. It is difficult to express what it was like for my parents to start from scratch, working like pioneers to clear the land, or what it was like for my siblings and I to spend our teenage years working so hard on the farm while going to school. I have chronicled my a story in my book called Shikataganai. It Can't Be Helped. It's covering the existing racism at that time. It tells of my parents' story as newlyweds, raising a family, and the evacuation, internment, and resettlement days. You can order it online at Amazon.com or at any bookstore. I have some books available for anyone interested. This is the English translation of a poem my mother wrote in Japanese at the time of the evacuation. Expelled, chased out from the land we lived in comfortably. Evacuation, 6 small children's footprints left behind, carrying suitcases. Kids were so excited. No money, destination not known, so worried, tired, exhausted from this journey, defeated with white flag. It has been 75 years since this dark blot in Canadian history took place. I was only a child then, but the experience has definitely shaped my life. I've learned that dark blots in one's life can work for good if we choose to let it. One can learn, grow, and become stronger as a result. I believe as Japanese Canadians we need to embrace the past, be thankful we made it past the hurdles, and continue to move on in the future as Canadians. I agree with the Apostle Paul in the Scriptures when he said in the second half of Philippians 3:13, forgetting what is behind and straining toward what is ahead. Thank you.